If you feel that you're stuck in the day-to-day operations of your agency and it's constantly an agency roller coaster, this is the episode for you. I've been interviewing amazing agency owners all over the world for the past decade, and I wanted to give you the best takeaways for hiring and training and finding the right who, so you can get out of the day-to-day operations, so you can own your agency rather than the agency own you. I know there's a lot of agencies that we kind of know, and we've talked a lot about who to first hire, right? And it really depends on, you really kind of yourself, like, are you really good at sales? Are you really good in operations, right? And hire the opposite. But have you ever been at a situation where you hired too many people?
Yes. Yeah.
And how did, what was the thinking about getting to that scenario? And then how did you get out of it?
I think that's a really great question. I think a lot of your listeners probably have done this before, where you get really optimistic about, well, if I just hire, I'll have the, clients to support it. And you're kind of in that balancing act of, how many employees is right for the number of clients you have. It's a utilization thing. And so, I think what we did is we started growing a lot. And so I took that as, well, let's hire a lot. And that's not always the best route, because then you're really just trying to kind of plug holes as you're, in your case, you're flying a plane while you're building it, which is fine. But I think, again, sometimes it can be problematic, because not only does it hurt profitability, but you're not really kind of focused on training that person up, getting them into the role that you really need them to be. They're just kind of there solving a problem. And sometimes it works. If you're growing at a fast pace, there's not a ton of other options, but it's really about how you course correct when you realize that, hey, you know what, maybe we did overhire, and how do we combat that? Is it we need to now invest more into sales to kind of make up for that? Or do we need to kind of take a step back so we can accelerate forward? So yeah, it's a balancing game.
What's your philosophy, or what's your process for when to hire now?
Yeah.
Like, you have around 50 people full time. So, how do you know when to hire next and how many?
Yeah. So last couple of years, that was a big focus of utilization rate. And I think this is something to really, take note of. If you're an agency owner that's starting to get to that next level where, you really need to have time tracking and see, is your team allocating at least 90%? I think that maybe golden rule might be 85% or something like that. But we look at 90% on just client work. The other 10% kind of dedicated towards, anything related to the company, more high level stuff. But I think it's really important to look at that utilization rate. And it's not always going to be 100% accurate, but it can be pretty darn close. So I think it's good to look at that. And then once you've really kind of maxed out, I think that is time to start looking. And then you also have to look at, really what's in the pipeline, and also not be afraid to be really, take a detailed dive into, like, is this business going to close? If it is, let's make sure we're prepared for it. So we also grade kind of our lead flow based off of like high certainty, medium certainty, and low certainty. And that also plays a role into how we hire.
Let's kind of talk about some of the mistakes that you see agency owners making. One of the, we were chatting before this, and, the most important stage in hiring is really kind of, I'll turn it over to you, and then let's go through some mistakes that they make in that stage.
Yeah. So everyone thinks like, the hiring process is hard, right? Hiring is hard. Whether you're hiring locally or hiring remotely, hiring is hard. And so you get to what you think is the last stage of hiring, right? You've made the offer, you've signed the agreement, you got the start date confirmed, and you just breathe this sigh of relief, like, oh, thank goodness, right? I've got this person is starting, my job is done. And it's not, because you've got to get them onboarded, right? And this onboarding phase is the most important bit of hiring, but people they're so relieved, right? They've kind of dealt with all the stress of hiring, right? And they're just ready to just kind of get things moving. So the mistakes that I see is that people either just don't prepare for it, And so new starter turns up on day one, there's no accounts for them. They can't access their email. They can't get into Slack. There's nothing's been prepared for them, right? And agency owners were all busy, right? And so maybe we hop on a quick call, we chat them through some stuff, but we're not prepared. And it's just a car crash. I've seen this in the corporate world, like years ago. I remember I was consulting and contracting, and I remember went in, it took 3 days for a large company with a large IT department. It took them 3 days to get me a laptop. Right. And I couldn't do anything for this first 3 days. Had some nice
So you were
conversations.
just sitting there?
And that was it. Just basically, I was having some nice chats, but I couldn't be productive. They were paying me a really significant day rate as well, and super common. And so I think, these are some of the mistakes, right? Not planning it in advance, not just kind of prioritizing it. That's the big thing. Actually, in your own mind, thinking about this as a stage of hiring, because what you want is you want to hire someone that's going to be with you for the long term, for a really long time. So thinking in your head that onboarding isn't just day one, it's not even just week one. I think of onboarding as a 12-week process, right? So 3 months, the end of 3 months, you're done, right? They're fully up to speed. And the effort isn't the same. There's a lot of effort in week one, then it tails off. But mistakes is people not preparing, not prioritizing it. And crucially, the other bit is not giving your new hire the kind of context of the business and the background. So who are your clients? What are your services? Why do you do things that way? So all too often people just are like, hey, this is what I need you to do. This is what we do for our clients. Go. And actually the history and understanding who's who and the team members, things like that makes such a difference to them being able to really kind of go above and beyond for you.
Yeah. I mean, and I always laugh and I was guilty of this. Like, I'm like, oh, I'll just give them all my SOPs and then they can kind of figure it out.
Yeah. And you've got to give them some things for day one and day two that don't involve conversations with you and the team, right? Because that they need a bit of a breather, right? There's only so much they can absorb. And one of the best things you can do to prepare, some agency owners might not have lots of SOPs, right? And that's okay. The thing you can do to help yourself with that is a few weeks before they start, just hit the record button on Loom and start recording you doing some of the tasks you do that maybe you're going to delegate down to them.
So it's like you're training them there.
Exactly right. So to give them something that they can refer back to, it also lessens the load on you. And also, for me in that first week, so we're a team of, we're 12 people. And in that first week, I want them to meet at least half the team. And then they'll cover the second half in the second week. And we just do like 15-minute meet and greet. Who are you? What's your role? Where do you live? What do you do? And just make them feel like part of the team. Because, and we're fully remote, right? Whereas if you're in an office, this kind of stuff happens naturally, right? They'd go for lunch with you, right? They might go for drinks at the end of the day. If they've got a question, they're going to stop at the corner of your desk and just ask you. And as a manager, you're going to pop in on them and check in on them. Whereas when they're remote, you have to be basically more intentional about this kind of like getting enough time with them and helping them out.
I actually think most business owners are bad managers. We just need to find the right people. I'm going to go back to something you said before, which is hiring and how we go down as business owners. We're like, oh, it's just expensive. I'm not ready. I don't have enough cash flow. Hiring is the best thing to do. Yes, you might take a pay cut at first. And yes, it might be a struggle. It will make your life a million times better. And I learned that right from you, Jason, because I was terrified in the beginning to start hiring and do everything. We're up to 15 employees. Are we the biggest agency? No, but my life is a whole lot nicer and easier because I can walk away and feel like a breath of fresh air and come back and go, oh my gosh, nothing went up in flames because the team had it covered, right? And we're more successful because we hired. Not people don't look back and go, I'm more successful because I'm just doing it all.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
you're not going to say that.
and that's the key. Not the team, and it's all depending on your ability. So, I think that's great advice. And kind of in closing, I'll tell everybody when you hire people, and let's say you've hired people that are wrong, not everybody's wrong for you.
To your point, I have hired. We have fired, we have found. Sometimes you might hire for a position and that person is great, but not great in that position, but you don't want to let them go. You got to talk to them about like what what are their goals? What do they see themselves doing? You'll learn a lot very quickly to figure out where to place them, or if they're even right to place in different departments in your agency, just from asking them that.
I fired a lot of the right people when I look back, and I was just it was me. I was at the wrong place, wrong time. I wasn't mature enough to see kind of what the value was. And looking back, I'm like, damn, they were good.
Yeah, that's the harder part. I mean, none of us look back and go, oh, we should have kept them, right? Sometimes we do, but a lot of times we're like, we should have fired them sooner.
One thing I see a lot of agencies struggling with is scaling and growing the right way. Obviously, you have 300 employees in one and 50 in the other. Where did you find that you felt like you were in no man's land?
Every day.
Still in still no man's land.
No, I think that's a good question. We were back to the beginnings of Inspira, the experiential agency. We were very thoughtful in how we hired because it was every dollar we had to make sure.
Well, you were losing money too.
Yes, right. But every dollar we had to go to the right place, right? And we didn't want to be, this was also part of the journal, the accordion agency, where you get a new client, you hire a bunch of people, and then you have the fallout and you squeeze back. And we said every hire is going to matter. And we taught our teams that way when they were like, oh, we're so stressed, we're so overworked. It's like, guys, if you sit down and look at your annual plan, is it just a squeeze for a moment, or do you need another person? When you look at the budget, that budget will come back to you in a form of a bonus. And then everyone's like, nope, we'll work late for a couple months or, a month or.
It's amazing how would you reframe it that way.
But empowering your team to make those decisions is so critical to also that like, we're not just saying no, we're saying you can be a part of the decision, but here's what the impact's going to be. Also, what's that going to do to the culture of your team, the culture of the agency, if we might not have work for them? And it really made people think differently about when to hire and when to rally the team. And so we had super, super, like what I'd say, strong growth of 10%, 10%, 10%. And we were growing, but like we were able to scale in a way of like, oh, we can add more clients because they're doing similar things and we could really be efficient. And then we had a client come to us and want a program that was very large, hiring 250 people in 12 weeks. We all held our breath and were like, this is going to make or break us. And it did. And we did the project. We pulled off the unconventional way but we did it with the team that was here. And every time we hired, we brought them in, and we brought in managers first, and then the managers started helping to recruit, and everybody was a part of building that program. And then they felt invested. When we had all 250 trained, it was like we had set off fireworks and had done the unthinkable. And that client is still with us. But also the client came to us and said, how did you do it? And I was like, I kind of have PTSD. I'm not sure I can ever do it again. However, when you have the people in the trenches with you and understand why the decisions were made and like looking at what the future could be and building it's incredible. And like I said, I can't say that I'd want to do it again. However, many of those people that started in that first program are still with us. So it's been a great career path for them as well.
I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.